So, first of all, my name is Shedrick. Everybody calls me Tex. I've been here for about, working with Sorinex for about 2.5 months now, but been with them as an athlete for a better part of a decade. And one thing I can tell you about this place is that everybody here is very, very humble, but yet physically cultured, and just have this, I guess you could say it's not a hidden power, but it's, they walk tall, but, don't have to show everybody that they're swinging singing from the fences. But everybody that comes on board of this family, has a great power in there. Like I said, they're very humble. One of those guys would be Trey Zepeda, and he probably won't tell y'all this, but his humility speaks volumes, because he stepped down from a top school as a strength and conditioning coach to come work for Sorinex. Only thing that he asked was that he could still train his athletes, and one of his athletes happens to be top 2016 shot putter. So that speaks volumes, just to say that he wants to, provide in another area in his life, and I mean, that's pretty awesome. So now that we know who's coming up, I want to introduce to y'all Dan McKinn's dad, Trey Zepeda.
Thanks, brother. Well, the secret's out of the bag, son. Yeah, I love you too, boy. We'll talk about it later. Who's your real mom? With that being said, there's actually, that's a whole nother story. Not the mom part, the son part. And actually, there's truth to it, because we were on a sales call down in San Antonio at Trinity University, and we're visiting and we're walking through the halls, and being the small fellow that he is, some coaches walked by and they saw this large man, and I guess this man, standing there, and they're like, good Lord, who's this recruit? We've got a season to look forward to. And they thought I was his dad. Well, that was funny and good, and then we left there to go get lunch, and we're at, I don't remember, some restaurant, high-end, 5-star, and the man behind the counter is like, thought I was his dad as well. I don't see the resemblance, but maybe I need to look closer. It's definitely the beard. With that being said, thank you, Tex, for introducing me and bringing me to this. And it's all true. I left the University of Texas to join Sorinex. And the nice thing about joining is this right here. Going from 18-year-olds to 24-year-olds to now teaching adults is kind of the way I look at it, and educating them on experiences. And everything we gather from each other is then to be passed on to others. And hopefully that's what I had did when I was at Texas in my time, to share with the kids and move on. The landscape has changed from when I got into it to what it is today, and that's kind of a point that I'm making here. But you have to evolve with the times, and you evolve with the kids, and that for me has always been a level of communication. Communication was number one for me. Relationships, close first as well. I never claimed to have the best programming, the best X's and O's, to understand some of the biomechanics. Would go way over my head a lot of times, but I could definitely read an athlete really well. And I didn't know that until I got into the profession. And to get into that profession, it's difficult. I was very unique in how I ended up at Texas. Nowadays, becoming a strength coach is putting your time in at a university as a GA, working your way up, bouncing to 3 or 4 locations, eventually getting your assistant position, moving on to 2 or 3 more schools, and then you move into an assistant head, director, so on and so forth. And all the while, you have a master's and an undergrad. I don't have a master's, but I feel like I have a master's in life and education of just dealing with people. Something was said very earlier, Lily was hitting on. I come up very similar as far as my background goes, is growing up just a rural kid in the country, and you just learn to work. And I wasn't the best student. I grew up South Texas, down near Victoria, And Dad always said, well, if you're not going to do well in school, you'll know how to move a shovel. And so that's kind of how I learned. And he still does some now, but not as much. He's 73 years old this year, a horse trainer, still team roping. So I grew up the cowboy lifestyle early on. And building fence, cutting wood, hauling hay, fail in school, put your books on the corner of the post when you walk in, go straight to the barn, your clothes are waiting for you, change, start cleaning stalls. And so that's kind of how it worked for me for several years. And grades go down, friends drive by. They wouldn't come over to my house, my buddies, when they would want to go down to the river or the bay. They wouldn't stop at the house because if they pulled up, Dad always had the same line, hey boys, y'all got 10 minutes? Just 10 minutes. I need y'all just for a second to move a couple of things. 10 minutes would be a half hour. And my friends didn't like me, so then I didn't have friends. But with that being said, they would drive up, honk from the road, which we had about 20 acres of land, and I could see their car, they're honking. I'd have to walk out of the barn and just wave, and that meant I'm, grounded, I guess. I never was grounded, I just was told, you ain't going to do it. And you're like, okay. If you want to challenge me, go ahead. Just like Brandon said, you can go on and do it on your own. And I never felt brave enough to walk away. I tried one night climbing up in a tree, and I was going to sleep in a tree. I'll show him. And I thought he had locked the door where I couldn't get in the house. He didn't lock it. He's like, no, if you come in, I'll kick your ass, and you'll go right back out. And I had that fear. I had fear of that day. I was like, I don't really want to challenge him. I did one little challenge. I got checked real quick. I knew never to go back again, and to this day, I would never challenge the old man. But he taught me the ethics of work. Just put in the time, listen, be willing to do what the other man's not willing to do, and your chance will come. And I put in hours upon hours to get where I was at. I moved to Austin in '99, like I said, and I was working 4 jobs, and one of them happened to be at the University of Texas as an intern. And I showed up, a friend of a friend said, strength coach needs help there, and you interested? I go, strength coach? Huh, I haven't really thought about that. In the meantime, I'd been training. I was running a gym in Hyde Park Gym in Austin, and working with a good friend of mine, mentor that really introduced me to weightlifting and weight training was Dave Gooden. And so I was working there, doing some training. Freelancing is another little tidbit about me. I was freelancing a recording studio on the side at nights, so I was learning to record music. I had worked in radio engineering for a long while. I did radio for a while in Kansas City. And then I was also just looking to find my way. One, get off the floor of my buddy's house and actually have a place to sleep and live. Well, all of that, fast forward, hit a point where my mentor that I was working with, Lance Hooten at the University of Texas, said to me, is this something you really want to do? And I said, well, I've got a 50-50 shot here. I want to do this because it's fun, strength coach, but I also want to be a recording engineer, but that's going to take time as well to develop because the guys in the seat are old and they're greasy and grimy and they know how to do it really well, and I got to pay my time. So, true story, I walked up inside the stadium at Texas and I was sitting up to the top, not the very, very top, but pretty high up, and I was looking across there and I was like, yeah, I think I want to show up here every day. So that's when I decided about a half year in, putting in anywhere between 20 to 30 hours every week for free in almost a year and a half. And Lance had 4 teams. He took care of men's swimming, baseball, men's track and field, men's golf. He would leave to go to baseball. I would stay in the weight room. I would work with track and field. One of the coaches of track and field at that time, my other main mentor that really introduced me how to do what I do, and what y'all all do, is Dan Paff. You can either love him, hate him, but he's been doing it a long time, and he's iconic at what he does. And he was the one who really opened my eyes into how to get this really done. And one question, we would do chalk talk at night. We'd go into his office, and on his dry erase board, he would draw up workouts and explain to me and decide why we're doing certain things with sprinters, what we're doing with jumpers, what we're going to do with the field eventers, all these variables, and I would be like, wow. It was just zooming past me. And I go, okay, I understand that. And he goes, well, what fear do you have the most about being a strength coach? And I said, well, probably the biggest thing is programming. Like I said earlier, not the smartest, brightest engineer mind here, but I said, that's the part that I fear. I potentially could have a job at a Division I university, a Tier 1 university in America, working with the best athletes potentially in the world at what they do. And something I'm going to write that they're going to trust and follow could screw them up and end some of them's life and career because of an injury, and I would take the blame of it was my workout that did that. Now, I might have been over-exaggerating that feeling, but that was the emotion I had. And he says, he just laughed at me, and I was really confused. He goes, that's what you're worried about, is programming and writing the correct program? I said, yep, pretty much. I read Tudor Bompa's book, and I can't understand it. He's like, yeah, most people can't. It's really difficult. I said, oh, okay. He goes, don't worry about screwing up on programming. That's the easy part. He says, I blow up athletes all the time. And I just kind of looked at him, and if you know who he is, you're like, what? You don't make mistakes. You walk on water. And he said, no, what you got to get good at is plan B, C, D, E, F. And it changes, right? But you never show up without plan A. So you have to have a plan. So whatever you invest in and you program, that's what you bring to the table, and then you work from there. So how many work in the institutional world? High school, college, I don't care what size. You can raise your hand for me. All right, so you know whether you're in the private sector, if you didn't raise your hand, it's still you're working with groups, potentially. And the key of that is write a plan, introduce a plan, and deal with the problems as they come. But know your direction of where you're going and stay true to that. What's really interesting now, this day and age, when I started and I look back then and I look to now, there is so much information out there, it's overwhelming. Like, how do we use it all? You don't. You don't use it all. When young coaches come to me and they ask, what should I do, or this or that, I say, what are you comfortable with? And they pass on to me, I like doing this and this. I'm like, great, get good at that. Know 3 or 4 things and be the best at it. And then use these other variables of ways of training and programming as tools in your box to advance yourself. But don't try to do all of this. The knowledge is overwhelming in this game right now. So what we encounter a lot, and I consider myself an older person, but is there's a plethora of knowledge in this world. And there's a lot smarter people out there doing this game. And all that information, though, doesn't validate anything until you go through experience and application. So don't get so much going for you that you never have time to put application to it. Once you've put application, then you all of a sudden gain what is called wisdom. And when you have wisdom, now you're on a good path. And you're really starting to identify not only better with your athletes, but who you are. And when you can get to that point, now you're going somewhere. It's an opinion, but it's also backed with fact and life. So it took me a lot of years to get to that point. But I found a few things that worked for me, and I stole them from Dan. And it's my programming, and it's been consistent. You find your staples, and you keep them with you, regardless of what you may read, regardless of what the next guru puts out on social media, and he swears by it, and he's got a bazillion hits and followers. Don't worry about it. Just be good at what you do, and be a good listener, build relationships, and communicate. And at the college level or the institutional level, it's a 3-ring circus. And it comes down between you, the strength coach, your sport coach, and the athletic trainer. You 3 are the key of the success of that athlete. One of you drop out of the mix. One of you drop communication. One of you pretend to communicate. That athlete's the one who suffers. If you all 3 are on point, you'll get through to the kid and you'll move on in life. So with that being said, that's kind of where I'm leading into this. What I want to get into is a little bit of training, so it's going to kind of take me out of this picture of how do you approach being an athlete. I'm not going to teach coaches how to be an athlete, but the question is everything I led up to is what is an athlete? I don't know. It's different with everyone you encounter. Just because you play sport doesn't make you an athlete. Remember that, and I'll address that again later on. Just because you're in a sport doesn't make you an athlete. Most times, if you're an athlete that plays a sport, that's cool, but most times you're a player that plays sport. That's what we see the most of, and that's wrong, right? It's your job to build the athlete at whatever potential that their DNA is capable of handling. That's what it is, plain and simple. my core principles that I've been faced to kind of come up with in my head, and they change over time, but I come across these, and I don't remember who I stole these from, and a lot of things I steal or borrow. I just forget who to return them to, so I guess they're now considered stolen. So the point of it is achieving excellence in human beings. You have general athletes, you have elite athletes, but all of them are athletes. I don't care what it is you do. My sports at UT were golf, track and field, cross country, men's swimming. 3 very successful programs at UT. 14 years with them, so I like to say I had enough time to not screw them up too bad. But I did have my mistakes, but I also had a lot of success. So my mentors in that process helped me come up with these ideas, and then I came up with these words by reading something along the line. The core performance, the principles in this, when you're addressing commitment, that's what you got to come up with for an athlete. Commitment. They must be all in. Sacrifices must be made. We all say that, we all know that, but it's your job to communicate that. Okay? Just because it's on the sheet doesn't mean it has to be implemented at that time. Because there's so many other variables that can pull you away from that constantly. In the institutional world, I'll refer to UT because that's my biggest base of what I've worked with. You're getting pulled by academics, one direction. You're getting pulled by a sport coach, another direction. You're getting pulled another direction by an athletic trainer. And then the athlete is pulling you another direction. So if you can get them to commit and be all in, a lot of that resolves itself. Ownership. They have to take ownership. So often at the D1 level, you'll find athletes show up, they get there, and they feel they've made it. They've busted their butt to get to that scholarship opportunity, University of Texas in this case, and it's done. Now, I'm supposed to provide to them. The school's supposed to start giving back to them, yet it just started. They're back at zero. And educating them on that and getting to take ownership of their newfound place and building back up what allowed them to get where they're at, that's where we're going to go. Responsibility. What you put into it is what you get out of it. Good or bad, it's on you. Okay? And it's on them as well. But that's where we got to go with responsibility. Excellence. You give what you believe, you have to give. Make yourself happy. You have to be selfish. All right? But with a good heart. Not with a motive of making yourself famous or popular. Know the reason why you're doing whatever it is you're doing. And that goes back to my original statement of have your plan made out. Know your few things and know them well. And continue to move on. So core principles. Those 4 right there, I feel every athlete that you work with has to have introduced to them. Some of them at the highest level already have it. Some of them have 2 of the 4, and they excel, but they have no concept of the other 2. It's just an opinion, but I also feel it's something that we use as humans, whether it is coaching, whether it is moving on into the private sector and training, or it's just, running a real estate firm. I don't know. Anything. Put it to your relationships, your husbands, your wives, your kids, your dog. It's all about it. So, with that being said, Henry Rollins, you may be familiar with him, you may not. I kind of dig him. I think he's a pretty awesome dude. Henry does a lot of speaking, spoken word. Maybe you've seen some of it, maybe you haven't. This statement here, no such thing as spare time, no such thing as free time, no such thing as downtime. All you got is lifetime. Go. Right? I wish I would have known that about 10 years ago because I was always trying to make time. We have the same 24-hour clock, everybody, right? But you're always trying to make time. And as a strength coach, you think time is being added because for some reason you're at the gym, more hours than you think are capable of being on the clock. Because you show up when it's dark, you leave when it's dark. The room I trained in, we had no windows, so I just kind of lost track of time sometimes in that point. And I ran across this, and I was like, that's so true. So what are we going to do? We're just going to kind of build from there and keep going. with that being said, athletes show up as freshmen in college, and they look at that and go, man, I'll just kind of feel it out this first year, and I'll be ready to go when I'm a senior. Nah, not at D1, and it shouldn't be at any level. We brought you in for a reason. We need wins. We're not handing out participation medals. I need you doing it now. And so some of them are developmental, don't get me wrong, but the elite, they're ready to go, and I need them to go. But what we find is their athletic level of maturity can sometimes be way up here. Then what is it, the psychological, I forget, their other maturity, their actual chronological is really low, and they just need time to grow. But then again, we don't have time, right? It's like, I've got 4 years to get you going, and the pressure's on, and your sport coach's job's on the line. But that's not something they're always concerned with or looking at. But with that being said, it's a path that we always have to address and be very critical of. Academics before sport. We all say the student athlete, the student athlete. And it's true, but not always true. But when you run across one that truly is a student athlete and he or she excels in both levels, what an amazing process to watch. It's unbelievable. I like to say those are the few that have the ability to pretty much achieve anything, with or without you. But even then, I've learned they need help and guidance. And you learn as much from them as they can teach you. That kind of takes me onto this path to this next page here. And Tex touched on a guy that I worked with, and I've been very fortunate to work with the best athletes in the world at the sports that I was given, and other sports that I didn't have as much involvement with. But I was just lucky, you know. I was in the right place at the right time, and I didn't screw them up. That's the way I look at it. I took them, I made them the best that I could physically make them, and in the process, they made me a lot better. And in doing that, you gain stories. And I know Coach Schrock, he could tell stories for, well, the rest of our lifetime. And you gain those, but those stories become a piece of you, and they become you. And so the most recent, when Bert approached me to join Sorinex, we actually approached me to help him find somebody to join Sorinex, and I pleaded and begged, can I be that person? He said, you know, do you know anybody that, no, his words were, hey man, we're thinking about putting some boots on the ground. I digress a little bit, folks, but I want to put some boots on the ground in Texas. And I kind of giggle, I go, okay, what do you mean by that? And he's like, well, here's what I'm looking for. And you being from Texas, I think you could probably find that coach, and you know, I respect what you do, so on and so forth. And he describes it, the person, and I giggle, and I go, yeah, I know that guy. And he's like, great, you got my number, give it to him. And I'm like, really? Like 7 of those points were me, dude. Like you described my height, beard, everything. Yeah, I kind of did. And he goes, well, I didn't think you'd be interested. I mean, you're at UT. Why would you leave UT? And I go, yeah, but I am interested. And so we'll fast forward. Here I am talking to you right now. And that's why I left. But I had the privilege of being able to be on both sides of the fence. I've been the consumer, and now I'm in the rep on one side. So I know it. But I don't approach a room and look at anything without being a coach or a teacher. And that's the only way I can see a room, is I walk in and go, okay, how many athletes do we have? When are they coming in? What's the schedule? Got it. I think a half rack would work over here better than a full rack, but an Uber would be nice over there. So that's the way I got to see a room. And I fortunately have worked with this product on both sides of that. With that being said, I'll get into the story, and my story is going to be about Ryan Krauser. You may or may not know him. You may or may not follow track and field. But 2016 Rio Olympics, he was the gold medalist, Olympic record holder, broke the Olympic record, and he was my guy, still is to a degree. But I would digress with the story about Bert hiring me. I said, well, I'm committed to these guys, man. I'm like, how soon would you need me? Yesterday. And I'm like, yeah, I can't take the job then, because I'm committed. I'm all in. Go back to my core principles. He goes, no, I understand that. How soon could you make it? And so there's no good time to leave an institution that you've built yourself there and you've built your identity. A good friend of mine older gentleman, very successful in life. He told me, he says, you'll know you've done well where you've been if you leave and people are sad. And I said, it's kind of dark, but I get it. I didn't really get it until I did it. And when I left, holy crap, did my allergies kick in. Whew, watering all the time. And the women's cross-country team was the worst. Oh my gosh, I became a big baby. Come on, let's do something. Roll over. Everybody face down, prone position. I can't look at y'all, you know. It's like, it was bad. So, moving on, I team up with this guy as a recruit. Ryan Krauser, the #1 track and field athlete in America coming out of high school. And that's not #1 thrower, it's the #1 athlete. So, 1 or 2 other colleges were interested in him, you think? Yeah, everybody. So it came down, the big hunt was between us and Oregon. And he's from Oregon. He's born and raised in Oregon. His uncles went to Oregon. They were elite throwers at Oregon. His cousin was at Oregon that he grew up with, his best fishing buddy at Oregon. All right? Now I want to fast forward and say he came because of me, just a little bit. But with that being said, he is at a point where he can go anywhere in the world, but his main focus is where can I get my education? He says, any school can provide to me. I know they're going to give me whatever I need. He's a very humble, respectful kid. But the first time, and I've dealt with a lot of parents, had I ever dealt with a parent, a mother and a father, that had an agenda that we had to follow, handed it to us, and said, this is how we'll run this recruiting visit. And every major school that they went to, that same agenda was handed. If the school tried to sneak around it or limelight it a little bit for him so he would be more enticed, they would pull him out. His parents would and say, no, stick to the program. We don't want anybody trying to overshadow. We're going to make the best decision for what is right for Ryan, and Ryan will make the best decision what's right for him if he is able to say what he needs. We're like, wow, impressive. So my coaches are in a panic, my track coaches. Trey, you need to write up programs for him, pretend he's here. We need to see this 6 weeks, we need to do this week, we need to do this week, we need it all broke down. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't write that far in advance. I mean, I can't even pretend. I said, well, I'm just going to take what I already have, what we do in August, and what we do in this month, and I'm just going to put his name on there. How about that, Coach? I'll just change some of the percentages, and I'll just put percents versus weight loads, and just go with that. Yeah, that's good. I'm like, whew, good. That was easy. Cut and paste. I'm good at it. Then he comes a week later. They go, oh, we got an email from his dad. Here's the workouts he's been doing. What do you do that relates to this? And compare. And I'm like, am I the only one getting this? Nope, it's been sent out to the schools. And really, at this point, it's just between us and Oregon having this discussion. And I'm like, oh, crap. And I'm looking at this. I'm like, nothing. Nope. My training doesn't match this at all. I don't know where I'm going to go with this. I said, is there any way I can talk with the dad, like find out his justification for this? Because I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just not what I'm going to do. So, fast forward, they come on the recruiting visit. I get to meet his dad. And keep in mind, who knows who Ryan Krauser is or have heard of him? Okay? A few of us. That's good. It allows me to tell a little bit more. His dad was also an elite level thrower. Okay? Jab throwers was a family tradition. Throwing the jab. But in that process, they threw disc, they threw shot, they threw hammer, they threw it all. And when I say he's coming from a lineage of throwers, we're going all the way back to Grandpa being a successful thrower. 3 brothers being very successful. 1 brother going to the Olympics, making finals, and being that kind of guy. You're like, holy crap. Like, I can't tell these people anything that they haven't already experienced or know. So they come in, they visit, we talk. And I said, the only way I know how to talk to this kid is just say, hey, what do you do outside of throwing? Maybe we can talk about that. And he goes, well, I like fishing. I go, oh, yeah. You like hunting? Because I like to talk hunting too. So that's where we connected. But we fast forward to the point of this kid is elite. He's 6'7". At the time, he's about 220 pounds. And he had been throwing all his high school years, and he played basketball. He quit playing basketball his junior year, focused on track. He threw shot, he threw discus, and he threw jab. And I haven't looked at the records, but he was broke most records except for the, no, he had the national record shot and disc, I think. But he was also a top-level jab thrower. But anybody that knows jab is about as unorthodox as it gets. It destroys the body any way you can imagine it, even when you do it right. And he had torn himself up pretty good from throwing jab. So I'm getting an athlete who's the elite of the elite, but is also broken. I'm thinking, great. What are you going to do with him? Well, I'm just going to build friendship, I guess, and try to wish for the best. And that's kind of what we did. We got him. We got the phone call, or my coach did, that Ryan Krauser's coming to our school. I back up a little bit. He came, one, because our, at that time, engineering program surpassed Ottawa, excuse me, I'll get to that in a minute, surpassed Oregon's engineering program. I'm like, cool, right on. So we must have said the right things. Knowing that he's coming, his dad had my cell phone. I'm like, yeah, call me. You know, it's cool. You got any questions? Whatever. I'm just trying to be nice. Well, lo and behold, Mitch Krauser's his dad. We're like the best of friends now. We still talk all the time. And over 5 years, you become friends with somebody. But he also made me his vehicle to communicate and find out what his son, because he knew once his son committed, he needed to step back. He needed to get out of the picture. That's kind of unheard of, especially for an elite dad. With that being said, that allowed us to progress and move on. And then I really come to find out more about Ryan and build my trust with him and build the trust with the dad. Mom was done at that point. Once she got him into school, she checked out. She was done. In order to be an athlete, you got to think like an athlete. Ryan was excelling academically, excelling athletically. We've got all kinds of ups and downs throughout the career. To walk away with degrees as he did, a Bachelor of Economics, Master of Science, and Finance, you're like, yeah, but didn't you say engineering? I say, yeah, I did. We found that that was too much. I had 2 guys in my entire career be able to pull off an engineering degree and pull off an elite level collegiate athletic process. It's just, you can't, because they both demand full time. And you only have, back to what we said earlier, what Henry Rollins, we only have so much time in the day. Ryan ran himself into the ground because he's an overachiever, he's a perfectionist, and he wants to excel at everything he does. Ran himself into the ground. He couldn't throw. He started complaining about his hands hurting. His wrist was injured. He got sick. His grades were doing okay. He wasn't sleeping. We couldn't put on weight. And as you know, to be elite, you got to put on weight. At that level, in order for that, any of those implements to go far, you got to be big. Strong is important. Adam Nelson will argue with me on size, but don't forget Adam Nelson is a freak beast when it came to strength. So it was just a juggle. Now, I could have taken a path, and I've seen a lot of coaches do it and said, man, it's your fault. You're not gaining weight. We just can't get better. That's not what you do, right? Go back to your core principles. Stress is high. We're questioning everything in existence at this point, right? He hates throwing. He hates life. He hates fishing, which I thought I'd never hear him say. I didn't let him come to the weight room a few times, and I said, just go fish. Just go. I'll see you tomorrow. Come in. We'll talk, whatever. I'd call him regularly. I'd stop by his house, visit with him. Now, it sounds like, all right, Trey, you're just putting all your attention on your eggs in one basket on one kid to try to make yourself. No, I'm still putting the same energy day in, day out with every kid on my team. I don't have to try to convince you of that. You can go there for yourself and ask them. And it's very, like I said, I can go back to the place I walk in and I'm greeted with that love of like, wow, I really made a mark. But we're talking about this situation. So my goal with him is like, Ryan, I got to get your stress down and we got to see our performance come up. Stress goes down, performance goes up. It's simple. We got to find a balance. What's it going to take? And the same time I'm visiting with the sport coach, I'm talking to his dad. We're all powwowing. And that's when it was decided, hey, Ryan, we need to go on a different career path. Let's find a different degree. And that's why you saw those degrees with the different names. That's where he went. Still not easy degrees, but he was able to find a balance. And when that happened, everything goes back up. And we find that his love for the sport has been rejuvenated. He's moving on. We're finding the path of like, hey, we might be able to get this. And all the while, the guy's still winning national championships at the college level, right? Making it to NCs as a discus thrower and a shot put thrower. We banned him of javelin, by the way. When he came to UT, we said, you get a scholarship, but you will not throw javelin, so don't ever ask. And that was like a legit written in the agreement because we didn't want that pressure of him trying and destroying him. With that being said, he makes it to NCs. He finishes podium 1 year in discus, wins NCs 2 times, 3 times, indoors and outdoors. What I learned from him is the old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. That's definitely what happened with him, is we led him and led him and led him, but we couldn't get him to believe or buy into it. But as my trust and belief in him grew, he grew with me. And we started to see progress. He shared stories with me, dreams of his as a child, seeing himself as an Olympian because that's been bred into him. Seeing himself breaking records, that's been told that you have the potential, you have the DNA, you could do this, you could do that. And he believed it, but he never had an ego that backed it, but he had confidence that backed it, and that's what took him to become what he is. So it's kind of interesting to talk about the past when we already know the outcome, and it's a fun path. Ryan, an athlete that throws shot put, he's not somebody to be taken lightly in the game of throwing ever again. People will recognize him from here on out. When Ryan achieved what he did at the Olympics, people were coming out of the woodworks like anything when you have success. And there was an article written, and that picture, that blue picture, and the writing next to it was written by a man named Brandon Drennan. Brandon was one of my throwers when Ryan was a freshman. Brandon was a junior or a senior. So he graduates, moves on, moves to New York. And Brandon was a very successful track athlete as well. Did pretty good. So Brandon writes an article on Ryan, knowing him, and he wrote it for the New York Post and the Huffington Post, 2 pretty well-known publications. And it got put in there, obviously, because it was a good write-up. But I bring up Brandon's name because there's 2 of my boys, and that's what I refer to all these, and whether it be girls or boys, it's my boys or my girls. All those kids become that to you. And what made Ryan more successful than his distances and accomplishments was the culture that we had started building at UT in the throwers and the men. Because at that time, I only worked with the men. Halfway through my career, we merged programs. But in that culture, Brandon was a senior. A few other guys, okay, I had to get my chronological order here. We weren't known for throwing. When Brandon was a senior, I had 4 guys on the team throwing over 60 feet in shot put, which is kind of a big deal. 60 feet in collegiate shot, that's pretty impressive. Brandon wasn't a shot thrower. He was a discus guy, made NCs. He was a legit discus thrower. But to have 4 of them was because of that culture, and they fed off each other. I didn't know until later when Ryan was a sophomore. I said, what really made you come here? Like one day just in conversation. And his answer was, he goes, I could see that culture you had. He goes, I could see how they connected with you. Academics are academics. These are his words. He goes, the professors, they were smart. They were successful. They had good write-up bios. He said, I like the head coach. It's cool. There's some good lakes around here I could fish at. I was happy about that. He goes, but I saw the way you, the strength coach, the performance coach, connected with these other fellas and the way they responded to you when you were in a room and the football team would be training and you were holding court with just these guys, and the way the football players watched the way you coached them, and they were admiring what they were doing. He goes, I wanted to be a part of that. And I said, wow, impressive. I would have never known that. Thank you. And so that's what he came for. And that culture developed him. So as much as I take credit for helping him, it was his teammates that grew him. I was just part of the vehicle. I like to say I drove the bus, but everybody in the bus was the one who made the team when we showed up to compete. That was just the cool part of it. Krauser's beginning was like any superstar athlete coming into D1. But like I said, there was a lot of pits and valleys with this guy, to the point where his dad and I talked, and Ryan was not going to ever throw again. I'm done after this season. Hanging it up, get a degree, go to work. They're like, wow, it's really down to that point. I'm like, nah, you just keep milking it. And I'm going to get into the long, drug-out story of, how it came about. We know that he didn't quit. That's kind of the truth. But I go back to earlier saying there's a few staples. Find a path that you understand and teaching that you understand and do it really well. My mentor, Dan Paff, has a program. This is his general strength. Call it special strength exercises, but we always refer to it as a team as GS. You may say, well, it's GPP or something of that nature. Yeah, it is. But this sheet right here is like the holy grail for a consistency of training. We applied this every day in some form. You don't do the whole sheet. The general strength exercises are abdominal, prone, supinated type exercises back, all the way down to multi-throw exercises, gas and tank, with medicine ball, bomb and shell, with shot put throws, and then multi-jump exercises. A variety of different disciplines that we're all familiar with. But we would implement those on a regular basis, either prior to track training or after. The throwers would come to the weight room, usually wrap up with some type of med ball throw. As boring as it gets after the first few times, we never stopped. And it implemented it day in, day out, year round. All right, that's the go-to. You don't change those kind of things. Path always said to me, don't try to overcomplicate the simple. It's simple for a reason. Keep it simple. And learn something on your own. If you want to bring something new, introduce it to yourself or some other test dummy that doesn't have anything on the line. I'm not talking about your athletes. I'm just saying your best friend or something. And then you can bring it into the mix. General strength was a critical component in our workout. There's also a backside to this. That was our warm-up, go jog, flex series, sprint drills being butt kicks, A-skips, stuff like that. Somebody in this presentations will talk more on that, and Coach Schrock actually does a very good job on a lot of those details. But that's the kind of stuff. Y'all all know this. I present it because you know it already. Don't abandon it. Don't look for a new path. Dynamic flex, sprint drills, hurdle mobility, I can't speak enough about. Who practices hurdle mobility? Anybody? You all should raise your hand. If you don't know what it is, Google it, because Google knows everything, and it's out there. And there's a lot of different versions. This is my version, that I stole, and I used it. And big guys and big women, throwers in particular, they can use it. All right? Don't lose sight of that. As my years progressed through training with all my athletes, I used to say, all right, we show up to the weight room. They had their basic protocol that they would introduce themselves to, warm up, either some sort of stick mobility, stretch, flex, get after it. And I was having sore backs because we would train at 6:30 in the morning. I had hamstring issues. I was having all kinds of tightness and issues over time, and I'm getting blamed for it. I'm trying to blame coach for it. And I'm thinking, man, these guys aren't going to just show up ready to go. So I got to take that as on myself to be a part of my workout. So I put a few things together. This sheet here, pre-lift mobility flex warm-up. What this allowed me to do was lay my guys all on the ground, sometimes standing up, sometimes laying down, and take them through a battery of exercises. Prone, supinated position, standing, whatever it was. Just warming the body up and prepping it and stretching it. Now, it wasn't just to prep the body. What it also allowed me to do is watch 20 to 40 athletes at a time and be assessing, right? And if you know your people, the slightest little discrepancy should raise a red flag in your head, and you should be ready to address it. Maybe not directly, but for example, Kevin comes to workouts. Kevin's always on point. He's laying on ground. He knocks out these exercises. He does V-sits flawlessly. Today, his legs aren't coming up even. He's missing a few reps. He's breathing a lot harder. He's sweating. What the hell's going on with Kevin today? Yeah, get through it. Find a little later, I go up to him, hey man, what's going on? And I'm just exhausted. I'm tired, this and that. Really, what happened? I've been studying. Okay, cool. Obviously, he doesn't want to tell me. I let it go. Come to find out, Kevin broke up with his girlfriend, got in a fight with his roommate, sleeping at another buddy's house, slept on the couch, hasn't been doing this, so on and so forth. So he's just a wreck. And I'm like, good deal. Rather than going, what the hell, Kevin? Making him a point and drilling him into the ground, saying, here's what we got to do to get better. But that was the culture we had in that room. We helped each other. My athletes would call each other out before I had to. But this was a critical component. How am I doing? 10 minutes? This was a critical piece that I implemented into the workout that never left. Any of my elite athletes still do versions of this, okay? It's ingrained into them. And it's given them enough effect and result that they won't leave it. I want to go to this real quick, and then I want to move on because I have very little time. I wrote this to Ryan, and I wanted him to read it, and then I wanted him to answer it. And we kind of worked from that. I'm sorry you can't read it because that's the actual chicken scratch that I write, and I'm going to read the top part and some of it to you. And this top question, this is before he just finished his eligibility. We're about to get ready for the Olympic trials, gearing up next few months. And I said, ask yourself, this is in third person, so I said, what do I want? He's asking himself that, right? How hard am I willing to work? What am I willing to sacrifice? This goes back to my original core principles, and I'm reminding him of this. Take a look at all distractions. Realize your body weight is very important. At this point, we're still trying to gain weight. We're at about 250 now at this point, 260 range. You're not recreating the will. Don't evaluate your throwing like an engineer. Putting your own style is not reinventing the throwing technique. Also list all of the changes that have come into your life from high school to college. And I said, in these order: school, academics, friends, coaches, girlfriends, family, home, where you live, your residency, hobbies, health, faith, deceased, who's left you. I had him talk and think about all this and write it down. And I said, share with me if you want to share with me. I just need you to have this conscious in your head. And he did. We've gone on. We're progressing. We're getting better. Here we are working out. This is January. He's doing a high box squat, 275, 605 pounds. Nice pause. It's not a power lifter box squat, but nonetheless, it's a box squat. A little slow-mo because I just like to watch the bar flex. With that being said, so that's cool, man. You don't have to mess with me anymore. We're good. So that's where we're at the point of training. It's training partners over there. Another one of my throwers, Jacob Vermaelen, made the Olympic trials as well with him. So it's pretty cool to have both of them there. He's strong. His weight's going up. He used to say things to me like that. Now, that wasn't the quote. I discovered this quote, and I was like, holy crap, Ryan used to talk like that. But he never said it in an arrogant sort of way. As we know, I'm not a thrower, but I feel like I am because I lived with so many of them and trained them. It just takes one, right? You got 6 throws. It just takes one. You know when you've made the right one. Bert, when it comes out of your hands, you know. Okay, that's Rio. Just broke the Olympic record. That's the feeling. 22:52. Destroying a record, all the work, stress, and doubt, that comes with it. So my long story about all of it, that's where we got to, and that's how we ended up. Strength is a product of struggle. You must do what others don't to achieve what others won't. Henry. Very fortunate to have been around two great Olympians. It's very rare can you have two alum of the same event at an Olympics win gold medals. Michelle Carter, I got to assist her at times when she was there at UT. I didn't train her per se, but I did work with her a little. But Ryan as well. If I've got 5 minutes. With that being said, as much as it is of becoming an athlete, what is an athlete? That kind of gives you the insight of the way I see an athlete and how it takes you to work with it. How do you approach being a teacher and less coach? There's me looking cool. Probably the only cool picture I've ever had. Is that what? Yeah. So the guy on the left is Jacob Vermaelen. That was Ryan's training partner. He was 2 years older than Ryan. Made the Olympic trials last year with him. So they're the best of buds. The guy on the right is currently the head track and field coach at the University of Texas on the whole program, Mario Satania. We're at this home meet at Texas. I think it might have been the relays or a twilight, but it's a home meet. And Mario comes to me. He's like, man, you need to go talk to Jacob. And I'm like, you're the coach and the throwing coach. Why do I need to talk to Jacob? He goes, because he'll listen to you. And that was my culture that I had built with my guys. I had to do all facets. Take the hat off, put another hat on, and go do it. So I'm out at the field, and I'm teaching him, like, bro, come on. Relate it to this, this, and this. And Jacob had a very successful meet. I do recall that one. He either won that one or placed second. In that respect, we're going to move through this pretty quick, but what it is to be a teacher is so important. See yourself as a teacher and educator. You're not teaching physics or math or any of that thing, or biology, which is all important, but as a coach, what you are, view it as a teaching opportunity, okay? Because what you pass on will stick with these individuals for a lifetime. 12 ways to infuse teaching with a purpose and meaning. Articulate your mission to yourself and to your kids. Be vulnerable. Don't have an ego. Don't puff your chest out to them. I'm not a believer in training with the kids. If they wanted to work out with me on my time, and I'm okay with that, and it fits in our program, by all means. You can't observe and teach by training if you're truly training, right? If you're putting it all in, you're focused. And then you forget about the kid. I'm not a believer in that. Opinion. Articulate your mission. Write it down. Be picky. Measure choices against your mission. Okay? This is you talking to you, looking in that mirror. And then it's also knowing these mirror of faces of all these athletes that look at you on a daily basis. Be accountable. Avoid mission drift. Right? Because it's easy to do. Real easy to do at the highest level when you got a lot of athletes being successful. I forgot what I was even doing. You're just great. I'm just going to go with greatness. It's easy to do. Be a role model. Model purposeful behavior. They're watching you when you don't think they're watching you. Don't fool yourself. Right? If you're having issues, get help. If you're not sure with yourself, get help. Learn. Be a mentor, make a commitment. I'm biased to my throwers because I spent the most time with them. I saw them all day, every day, sometimes AM, PM lifts, Monday through Sunday, okay? So I became their mentor, and some of them, you know, your father figure. Volunteer, champion a cause. Get yourself out of your element. I know we don't have time to do it, but find a way to help, right? Take dog food to the humane shelter and just drop it off, or whatever. Find something that you can invest in outside of your sun up, sundown, 16-hour day. It helps. Helps you see the world that it's more than just what it is in that weight room day in, day out. Find your tribe, connect with peers. All of you are doing that really well because you're here. Learn to say no, open up time. You can only do so much, right? But, Trey, you're contradicting yourself. Yeah, learn to say yes, take risk. Okay? But it goes back to earlier deal, core principles and balance, and you can do both of those. Remind yourself, keep returning to your mission, because it's easy, as I said, to start finding new discovery and finding new things that interest you a whole lot and wanting to jump on those paths. Don't stay on Google too long. Don't go down the rabbit holes of social media, because it will take you places you don't want to go. Step away, replenish your energy. At some point, you just got to stop. You can only do so much. You got to rest. You got to recover. A lot of y'all are stepping away, even though you're here. You're stepping away, trust me. If you're staying the whole weekend, you won't replenish your energy, but you'll definitely have a good time. Get uncomfortable, avoid complacency. That's a big deal right there. A lot of us, we find our program, it's contradictory, it sounds like to what I said. Stick with what you know, don't change from that. Yes, that is true. But be willing to listen and learn like you're doing from me. Hopefully one thing sticks with you today, and that helps you grow a little bit. John Wooden, everybody knows him. If you don't, and you don't write anything else down that I've said today, write his name down and live by some of his models in his life. You can't go wrong with that guy. Punctuality, every set, every rep, proper technique. Those are 3 disciplines that I had with every athlete when we did lifts. Got it? I didn't lose that. That was always true. And I'm going to wrap up with this right here. Everything that I've talked about is about building a culture and having that culture build itself within. You're just the driver of the vehicle, okay? And that's your job to continue to do. But this right here is what's going to set it apart. And I didn't invent those words, so I'm not that creative. But it's definitely what I did on a daily basis. That's me. Reach out to me. I love hearing from people. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate all your attention. And enjoy your time while you're here, folks. Have a good one.